What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to that channel where I talk about whatever I want, usually music, but there'll be some other things thrown in as well. Today, I will be reviewing and ranking the Muse albums. Well, not doing a full review because I actually plan on doing a full review of a few of them in the coming weeks, just leading up to when I go see Muse live in Oakland. But in the meantime, I decided let's rank them all, and this was a hard list to make because you're not going from worst to best. As Nightwalk said, you're going from good to great. I think the weakest albums in this ranking are still really impressive and really good. And there's a lot of songs that I love off of each album, and there aren't a lot of songs that I dislike. I really do love all of Muse's discography. I think they have some great songs. These are the studio albums, so I'm not going to count Hullabaloo or any live albums or anything like that, or any B-sides or any EPs. This is just going to be studio albums. I own the CDs for all of them, so I'll show that. I just actually purchased a bunch of the CDs that I was missing, or three of them, the three most recent ones besides Simulation 3, which is the first one that I ever owned. But anyway, we'll be counting these down, giving you guys my thoughts on my favorite songs, some of my least favorite songs off each album, and why they rank where they do. Alright, so coming in at number 8, we have The Resistance. Now, the weird thing is about The Resistance is that it's definitely a great album, and it's really weird putting it at 8 because it doesn't seem like it deserves to be at this spot. And one of the things that I'm going to say about this album is, unlike some of the upcoming albums here, there aren't really that low of low points. Like Guiding Light isn't the best, and some of their poppier tunes off here, specifically The Resistance and Undisclosed Desires, I personally can live without, even though Resistance is definitely growing on me. That song used to be one of my least favorites by Muse for whatever reason, but definitely starting to appreciate that song a little more now. But in the meantime, just talking about Resistance briefly, this is an album that's really, really good. I just don't visit it enough. I just don't think for me there's enough to make me want to revisit it and come back to it, even though there's a lot of good. I'd say the best part, the highest point of this album has to be Exogenesis Symphony. I don't even rank them as songs. I think that's unfair, but it's a 3-part symphony that they did. A lot of people consider that kind of pretentious, but I thought it was pretty awesome. I'm definitely a part 2 person, but as a piano player, this album definitely has a lot to love. Because that's a very piano-based tune, and there's a lot of piano-based moments on here. United States of Eurasia is one of the best songs on the album, definitely one of my all-time favorite Muse songs. And MK Ultra, I'm actually kind of new to the MK Ultra bandwagon. I know a lot of people that consider it one of their favorite Muse songs. It was one that took time to grow on me, but I think if I had to pick a favorite Muse song that's of course not Exogenesis Symphony off this album, it would probably be that one. I think it's a really good song. I guess there's just not enough bringing me back to this album, where it's not like the next couple where there are some definite low points on them, although Guiding Light is pretty weak. It's more the fact that there's just not enough to make me want to come back to it, even though it does have that bass clarinet solo as well. So Resistance, just not enough making me want to come back to it. It's the album I forget about the most, but it's not to say there's a lot bad. There's a lot good. There's nothing that really makes me want to listen to it all the time, unlike the next upcoming albums where there's always something that I want to check out. Alrighty, so coming up next, we have a very well-known album by Muse. This is The Second Law. First of all, I love that album cover. So this is a really weird Muse album. It's very interesting in that one of my issues with it right off the bat, and one of the reasons it's in my bottom 2, and it actually kind of made a push to be the weakest one, is just the fact that the songs are so different from each other. I really like the cohesion of some of Muse's albums, and I like it how a lot of them have that same sound. The sound is kind of all over the place with this album, and that's one of the things that doesn't make it my favorite. But that being said, there are some really good songs. This album starts really strong. Supremacy, which I know Skyfall was amazing, so I'm not going to say it should have been the Bond song, but that should be a Bond song. I mean, it's just made, and it's perfect for James Bond, even though the lyrics are kind of goofy. Madness, very controversial amongst Muse fans. Madness is one of their best songs in my opinion, even though it's not one that I listen to all the time. I think Matt's vocals in it are amazing. I think it's one of the best hit songs in a long time. I think it's just easy to hate on it because it's part of the direction of Muse that, we're not the biggest fan of. We all want Origin of Symmetry, Absolution, Black Holes. We want that Muse back. But really, it's an all-new band, it's an all-new sound, and I really do appreciate the new sound, and this album really illustrates that well. Panic Station's really awesome. I think that that's a great song. And then you go into some of the more overlooked, underrated songs. Explorers is really good. Survival's awesome. That's a great song. They chose it for the Olympics. It's really good. And my personal favorite is actually Big Freeze. I know a lot of Muse fans aren't the biggest fans of Big Freeze, but Big Freeze is one of, if not Matt's, very best vocal performance. It's actually incredible vocally. And it's just a really good song. It's like a U2 song, but I actually like it better than a lot of U2's top songs. I think it's really good, and it's one of my favorite Muse songs personally. I think it's awesome. Where it falls is I'm not the biggest fans of the lower points, I guess. The songs where Chris sings, while I do appreciate Chris as a vocalist, they're not my favorite songs. I can live without them. I forget about a lot of the songs. I know Animals is awesome and it's 5/4, but it's a song that I never return to. And the ending with Unsustainable, I think Unsustainable, I've heard it called a dub misstep. Yeah, I could live without Muse incorporating dubstep elements to their songs because I'm not the biggest dubstep guy. I was as like a kid. But at this point in my life, I could live without it. Although it seems like a cool live song. Isolated System seems like a great live song, but to listen to on its own, it's just kind of forgettable. Still, the top moments on this album make it worth returning time and time again. And it's a great album to drive to as well. So Second Law, going to place at number 7, but it's still a great album. So the next Muse album to appear on this list is none other than Drones. Definitely not as good of a cover art as the last couple, but I will say this about Drones. I think it's a great album. Definitely flip back and forth between this and the next one. It was really tough, but the 2015 Drones makes it on here. So take what we talked about the Second Law and up it to 11. With the Second Law, I talked about the fact that there's some tracks that are absolutely fantastic, sensational, worth returning to all the time. And there's also some that aren't the best. I find with Drones, the extremes are even more prominent. But that said, the highs are so good that I definitely have to prefer Drones. So talked about the highs. It starts with Dead Inside. Dead Inside is one of the best Muse songs in a lot of ways. Vocally, I love the structure of it. I think that it might have slipped into my top 10 since last making that list. It's really moved up for me. I've listened to it a lot lately. I've been kind of in a Dead Inside phase. So definitely love that song. I think Reapers is fantastic. I think it's an absolutely great song. It has that epic solo. It's one of Dom's most underrated drumming performances. I think it's a fantastic song. It's also really long, too. It really is a hard-rocking tune. And then Handler is, of course, the best off the album. Truly one of the most perfect Muse songs. One of the best hard rock songs of this decade. I think Handler is absolutely outstanding. So there's that gigantic big three of songs that are just absolutely titans in terms of great songwriting. The rest of the album, I'd say a lot of it's just pretty good. I really like Globalist. I think it's a very ambitious. It's not something that I return to often, but I think it's really, really, really cool. Defector. I think Defector is a great song. It's not one that I listen to frequently, but I think it's a great song that kind of is a great representation of what Drones is. The ones that I'm not the biggest fan of. Psycho, I think, is probably the worst Muse studio album. I know it's really popular, but it's just kind of weak, and the lyrics are pretty bad. I find it to be kind of generic and hard to be taken seriously, especially when it's supposed to have a serious theme of the problems with the military and the problems with the drill sergeants and everything and how strict they are. It's kind of like trying to be the Full Metal Jacket first half of the film in a song, but it ended up being just absolutely cheesy and laughable. And I don't think having a kind of generic hard rock riff really helps that at all. And the drill sergeant portions are just kind of, they're kind of weird. The voice acting isn't the best or anything like that. And Revolt and Mercy are songs that I routinely skip. I think in my Muse rankings document, I do have Revolt as my least favorite Muse song, and that's simply because I find it cheesy and don't ever find myself listening to it. So, again, I think that this album could be a lot higher if it had some consistently good songs, but some of my least favorite Muse songs are on here, so that doesn't take away from the album too much, because again, I put this album on all the time just to listen to Handler, Dead Inside, Reapers, Defector, which are all fantastic songs. But the other songs could live without, similar to the Second Law. We're in for a little controversy here. Next up, we have Simulation Theory. I'm going to make this one quick just because I think my next video on this channel will be a review of Simulation Theory where I'll break down every song. But I absolutely love Simulation Theory. I especially love the fact that it has those bonus tracks. I think that really adds to it. But just talking about the basic album, I think the best songs are Dark Side. I think that's an incredible song. Blockades is kind of an amalgamation of everything that we love about Muse and combining a bunch of their best songs together into one and giving it that 80s vibe. I think that Break It To Me is fantastic. I think Propaganda is a really unique and underrated song, and I'm so hyped to hear it live. And I think Void is one of the best songs they've ever done. Both versions of Void are among some of the best songs that Muse has ever put out there. There's a lot to love here. There are a few songs I'm not the biggest fan of, those being Thought Contagion, Get Up and Fight, even though one of my best friends loves that song, and of course Dig Down. But they're starting to grow on me, and I do prefer them to the weakest stuff on the Second Law and Drones and The Resistance personally. This album's fantastic. I'm going to keep it short at there. The review's coming up. The review will be long. I have a lot to say about this album and the songs on it, so let's move on. All right, so up next is one that it's kind of hard to explain why I like it so much, but it's of course our good friend Showbiz. First of all, I love this album art. This album art, that blue is beautiful. Showbiz is weird because it's the very first we've seen of Muse, and it's definitely objectively weaker than a lot of their albums. You know, every one of their albums got more musically ambitious and got bigger, more epic on a grander scale. This is kind of like garage rock mixed with some, you know, early Muse ideas. But it's really awesome. I think there's a lot of songs that aren't the best off here, that are cheesy, but I do genuinely enjoy listening to those from time to time over some of the more boring songs off of the albums below. I think everything on here is interesting in some way, shape, or form. I think Showbiz, the song, is one of Muse's best tunes ever. The fans seem to agree it's absolutely insane and ends in 45 of the best seconds in rock music history, in my opinion. Muscle Museum is a classic for a reason. Sunburn is really haunting and beautiful and chilling, and I really hope they play it live on this tour. Unintended is overlooked a lot of the time, but it's a really good Muse song. It's really beautiful. It's one that you can sit back and listen to. You do feel the emotion in it. I think Uno is a really good song. It really has quite an epic intro. It's really unique and weird, and it combines that Latin flair. It's just really interesting and awesome. And I think, you know, Cave, really good song. I think there's a lot to love on here. Philip. There are a few songs like Overdue and Sober, which are some of Muse's worst, but as I said before, I find them kind of entertaining and cheesy to listen to, as opposed to songs like Mercy, like Revolt, those songs that I just kind of skip over and don't really care about that much. Save Me. So this album, it's not the best objectively. It's got its flaws and quirks, but for me to listen to, I listen to it more than a lot of the albums, and I have a personal favoritism bias towards this album for no real reason, considering I'm a fairly new Muse fan. But I love how it started it all, and it really does have a great raw sound to it, and the top tunes are really worthy of being some of the top they've ever made. So recently there's been a debate in the Muse community, well there has been for a long time, but especially on Reddit lately, in a bit of a meme war between Absolution and Origin of Symmetry, and I'm going to give my thoughts on this one early. Absolution at number 3. I think Absolution is a fantastic album. I think a lot of people expect it to be my number 1, just based on my music taste, because both, being a pianist and also being someone that used to be a huge metal fan, I've kind of came out of that phase, but this album definitely combines both heavy pianos and some metal elements to it, in songs such as Stockholm Syndrome and The Small Print. But I have to say, this is a really good album. The middle tracks are probably the reason why it's only at number 3, because I generally find myself skipping over a lot of the tracks in the middle of the album compared to ones at the start and end of the album. Songs like Blackout and Falling Away With You are songs that, I can live without. The big hits off this album include Stockholm Syndrome, which is one of Muse's objective best songs. It has a killer riff, one of Dom's best drum performances, amazing vocals, a beautiful chorus, great usage of the piano. I think it's an absolutely incredible song. I think Butterflies and Hurricanes is a huge fan favorite, and it's also another really epic piano piece. I love the little piano solo that just catches you off guard. It's so beautiful, throwing in classical elements of piano and strings onto this song. For a long time, Butterflies and Hurricanes was a top 5 Muse song for me. I think it was kind of a victim of overplay. My favorite song on this album, without a doubt, is Ruled by Secrecy. I think Ruled by Secrecy is an absolutely stunningly beautiful, gorgeous tune. This and Sing for Absolution are two of the most beautiful Muse songs, and Ruled by Secrecy is just one to sit in a dark room and listen to it building. It's so beautiful. You feel the emotion. It just does everything right and more, and I think it's one of Muse's best songs. In fact, out of all the Muse studio album songs, it is my favorite Muse studio album song of all time. The only song that beats it is actually Hypochondriac Music, which is a B-side that was included on Hullabaloo, which is an acoustic kind of retelling of one of their best songs, Hyper Music, as it stands. So either way, spoiler alert for my other list, but Ruled by Secrecy is my favorite Muse studio album song. As for the ones that I think a lot of people want to hear me talk about, Time Is Running Out and Hysteria, they're songs I can live without. I never listened to them personally. They're not the songs that got me into Muse, unlike a lot of fans where they usually have one of those two songs as one of the driving forces. Those songs were introduced to me actually kind of late in my Muse fandom, especially Time Is Running Out. So not the biggest fan of either of those, but I understand why they're so popular, and I understand why they're so iconic among the band's fans and among the band themselves. Alright, so we've made the top 2. Number 2, we have Black Holes and Revelations. So I'm planning on reviewing this one soon, but I'll give you guys a little bit more of my thoughts on this one compared to Simulation Theory, where I cut it kind of short. Take a Bow is a perfect way to start this album because that's an incredible song. And this album just keeps throwing awesome songs at you. One thing that I love about this album in particular is there's always a new song that kind of catches me off guard. You know, I first started listening to Muse. We had Take a Bow and Knights of Sidonia and Glorious were the three off this album. I know Glorious is the bonus track, but those are the three that made me want to listen to this. But then I fell in love with Invincible, which is still a really amazing song and one that means a lot to me personally. That was my favorite song off the album for a long time. But then I found Map of the Problematic to become my favorite. And Map of the Problematic is one of Muse's best songs. It combines kind of simplistic yet really intense drumming from Dom, which I think is one of his better drum performances. I think it sounds amazing. I think the transitions are absolutely fantastic on it. I think Starlight, I know a lot of fans tend to hate on it, but I think Starlight, it definitely shows the new direction for Muse, and it's not the most complex song, but I think it's a really beautiful song and one of their best hit songs for sure. I think that City of Delusion is super underrated. Definitely a huge fan of City of Delusion, one of their best songs of all time in my opinion, one that just missed my top 10 list. I think there's a lot of great songs on here. Hoodoo is super underrated. You don't hear that talked about that much. There's a lot to love on here, and it of course ends with the epic Knights of Sidonia. And you gotta give credit to some of the more popular songs on here that I didn't mention, like Supermassive Black Hole being one of them. I'm not the biggest fan, but that song definitely brought Muse to prominence. That was one of their big hit songs. And I kind of see why. It's definitely a really unique, great sounding song. It's funky, it's fresh, it's really good. So Black Holes and Revelations coming in at number 2. You guys all know what number 1 is, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. And number 1, we have Origin of Symmetry. Look at that light reflecting on this. By the way, the album cover is totally yellow, not orange. But talking about this album is probably my favorite album of all time. It's really been one that I love. The first song on this album, Newborn, is one of their better songs, and it's one of their most beloved among the fan base. The fan base loves Newborn. And that might be my least favorite song on the album, and I still love it. So if that's saying something, that the fan favorite, that the most popular song probably among fans, apart from maybe one or two more on this album, is my least favorite, it shows how good this album is. It just keeps getting more and more awesome. Bliss is fantastic. Definitely an incredible song. Space Dementia is one of their objectively impressive songs they've done. It's beautiful. I love the incorporation of romantic era piano into it. Incredible song. Hyper Music is really awesome. The real reason I love it though is because of course it made way for my favorite Muse song of all time, Hypochondriac Music. Plug-in Baby, a live staple, one of their best songs ever, one of their most well-known songs for good reason. Really fantastic vocal performance, probably their best riff. Really good. Citizen Erased, probably the best song they've ever done. There's a few that I personally prefer, but I think you look at the impact of it, you look at how unique it was, and just how it's structured, and just everything about it, the creativity, the vocals, everything about that song makes it impressive. Microcuts, one of the craziest falsetto performances in rock music. Screenager is a song that I don't listen to that much, very Radiohead-esque, but very good. Dark Shines, again, very, very good as well. Feeling Good, great cover. Maybe the weakest off the album. I know Newborn isn't my favorite. It's probably my least favorite. But I think that it's between those two, but still amazing. And then Megalomania, you can't end an album in a better way. Incredibly dark, haunting, beautiful song with one of Matt's greatest high notes at the end. Alright guys, thank you for watching this video. Let me know how you rank the Muse albums, and I'll see you guys all later. Goodbye everybody.